Have you ever been watching a movie and gotten that weird feeling of déjà vu, like, hey, I've seen that castle before? Well, today we're diving into a medieval fortress in Scotland that is a legit Hollywood celebrity. But its real story? Oh, it's a tale of power, ambition, and rebellion. And it's honestly even more dramatic than any role it's ever played on screen.
Seriously, if you've ever gotten lost in an epic fantasy series or quoted a classic comedy, you've probably already been to this castle without even knowing it. It's got to be one of the hardest working actors in showbiz, a true character actor, just made of stone. Let's see if you recognize any of its big roles. Okay, for all you Game of Thrones fans, this might blow your mind. This castle, it was the original Winterfell. Yep, the great seat of House Stark in the very first pilot episode. This is where we first met the Starks, before their entire world was completely turned upside down. Now, if historical romance and time travel are more your thing, you'll definitely know these walls as Castle Leoch. This was the fictional home of the Mackenzie clan in the smash hit series Outlander. It was all over the first season, becoming a central character in its own right. And for the comedy nerds, this one is absolutely iconic. The castle played not one, but pretty much every castle in the 1974 classic Monty Python and the Holy Grail. From the French-occupied fortress at the beginning, all the way to the very perilous Castle Anthrax. So yeah, its acting resume is pretty impressive, right? But that just begs the question, what's the real story behind these famous walls? To find that out, we've got to forget the dragons, forget the time travelers, and rewind the clock way back, over 600 years. We're heading back to the late 14th century. This was a really turbulent but also incredibly creative time in Scottish history. And this castle, it wasn't built by a king. Nope. It was built by a man who was, for all intents and purposes, king in everything but name. So let me introduce you to Robert Stewart, the first Duke of Albany. This guy was the son of a king, the brother of a king, and the uncle of a king, but he never actually got to wear the crown himself. He's often called one of the most ruthless and cunning figures in all of Scottish history, and he built Doune Castle as this massive, unapologetic statement of his power and influence. Okay, just look at this timeline. It really shows his relentless climb to the top. He gets the lands through marriage back in 1361, and by 1388, he's basically running the country for his elderly father. He builds this magnificent castle around the year 1400, and by 1406, he's regent again, this time for his nephew, James I, who was, conveniently, being held captive in England. Albany died at the absolute peak of his power, having effectively ruled Scotland for over 30 years. And you can really see just how seriously Albany took his security. I mean, the main entrance through that massive gatehouse tower was basically a death trap. Any attacker would face this brutal sequence of obstacles, a heavy portcullis, then a hinged iron grill called a yett, and all the while defenders could just drop rocks, boiling water, and all kinds of nasty stuff on them through murder holes in the ceiling. No thank you. Now this is what makes Doune so incredibly special. You see, most medieval castles are kind of a patchwork, built in different phases over hundreds of years. But Doune, it's basically a time capsule. It's the pure, undiluted vision of what one incredibly powerful guy thought a perfect fortified home should look like, right around the year 1400. Albany's power might have seemed absolute, but his dynasty, well, it was not destined to last. After he died in 1420, the fate of his family and of the incredible castle he built took a very sudden and very violent turn. The year 1425, remember that. Just 5 years after Albany's death, this was the huge turning point, the moment where the same ambition that built Doune would lead to its downfall. Because King James I, the one who'd spent 18 years as a prisoner in England while Albany ruled, finally came back to Scotland. And he wasted absolutely no time settling scores. In 1425, he had Albany's son and heir, Murdoch, executed for treason. Just like that, Doune Castle was seized by the crown, and the Albany Stewards' control was over forever. So for the next century and a half, the castle that was a symbol of a rival's power actually became a favorite royal retreat. It was used as a hunting lodge since it was so close to the royal court at Stirling. It was also used as a dower house, that's a residence for widowed queens, including the wives of James II, James III, and James IV. Even the famous Mary, Queen of Scots, stayed here a few times. And the drama doesn't stop there. Fast forward to 1745, during the famous Jacobite Rising. Forces loyal to Bonnie Prince Charlie captured Doune and turned it into a makeshift prison. They held government soldiers here that they'd captured at the Battle of Falkirk.
And this leads to a truly incredible story. A group of prisoners who were being held in the guest rooms right above the nice, warm kitchen hatched this daring escape plan. They literally tied their bedsheets together to make a rope and climbed down the high castle walls to freedom. Now get this, one of those escapees was a man named John Witherspoon. He would later move to the American colonies, become president of Princeton University, and be the only clergyman to sign the United States Declaration of Independence. How crazy is that?
So after centuries of royal intrigue and military action, the castle's fortunes started to decline. It was pretty much abandoned and just began to fall apart. But its most famous chapter was still yet to be written. By the time the 19th century rolled around, this once mighty fortress was really just a shadow of its former self. The huge timber roofs had collapsed, leaving these magnificent halls totally open to the harsh Scottish weather. It was this romantic, picturesque ruin, sure, but it was on the verge of being lost forever.
But then a rescue mission. In 1883, the Earl of Moray, whose family had owned the castle for centuries, funded this massive restoration project. They painstakingly replaced the roofs of the Great Hall and the Lord's Hall, put in new wooden floors and paneling, and basically saved the medieval structure from complete collapse. And this is exactly why it all matters for our story today. That 19th century restoration didn't modernize the castle, it preserved it. It left us with a building that looks and feels like a genuine 14th century fortress, which made it the perfect, ready-made film set for any director looking for real authenticity. Okay, so now that you know the dramatic, real-life story of this stone celebrity, what's it actually like to visit today? Here's what you need to know to walk in the footsteps of dukes, queens, rebels, and of course, movie stars. So, if you're feeling inspired to plan a trip, here are a few tips. First, it's a super popular spot, so booking your tickets online beforehand is a must. Parking right at the castle is really limited, so just plan on using the car parks in the nearby village. And here's my top tip. Get the audio guide. It's brilliantly narrated by Terry Jones for all the Monty Python fans and Sam Heughan for the Outlander crowd. You literally get to choose which version of the castle story you want to hear. And for a final bit of fun, you have to love that the castle totally embraces its pop culture fame. The gift shop famously sells coconuts so you can reenact your favorite scene from Holy Grail. I mean, it's the perfect souvenir that just captures the castle's unique blend of serious history and beloved comedy.
You know, in the end, that's the real magic of Doune Castle. It's a place where you can stand in this magnificent great hall and imagine the feasts of medieval lords, and then, in the next moment, almost hear the faint sound of knights banging coconut shells together. It's a place where centuries of real history and iconic fiction live side by side. So the only question left is, which story will you be a part of?